Hey, hello everyone. How's everyone doing this wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you guys are based on? Hey, what's going on everyone? For those of you who are new, my name is Rodolfo Silva and welcome to the Environment Art Workshop on ZBrush Live. How you guys doing? Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for some Z-juice? ZBrush juice? ZBrush juice? I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. From Argentina. Wow. Hola. Hello. How you guys doing? Nice to see some Latin American people here as well. Some people from the UK already in the chat. That's cool. That is cool. All right. You guys are ready? Okay. Again, as this, as the title suggests. First of all, let me know if the music's too loud. I can readjust that because again, I'm streaming from the desktop audio, so whatever I'm hearing, it's sort of like what you're hearing, but a little lower. But I can adjust it on OBS. So let me know if the music's too loud. From Germany. Well, I'm in Germany too. So, hola. Well, hello. Sorry, there's a lot of languages that I go through every day. Hallo, wie geht's? That's the gist of it. That I'm learning, okay? I'm learning German. Don't throw that in my face. I'm learning German. Been here a while, so. Okay, so let's go to our screen here. Music's good. That's cool. That's good to know. Alles gut. Okay. So, last time, which was a couple weeks ago, I'm trying to be more consistent with my streaming this year. I don't know if you've noticed, every other week, trying to come in here and give you some of that ZBrush voodoo, black arts, dark magic kind of a thing. And last time we went through how to actually sculpt some props, how the process goes for blocking out, stuff like that. Today, I was thinking, because as you know, I'm building like a collection of assets for games, like game assets, which are medieval kind of village themed, but also, again, this might be like market stalls, it might be like a blacksmith or something that we could build in the future. I'm just focusing on the very basic props and assets that you would expect from something like that, right? And over here, we actually went through how to block out the marketplace. I haven't touched that, to be honest. But I did do a few things over here that might interest you, such as this. This is a test that I was doing. Such as this little bag over here, which is sort of like a grain bag. And you can see there's some cloth things going on over here. Using some cloth brushes, using some dynamics to simulate this. And the cool thing about this is that this is using the retopology brush. Again, over here, this has subdivisions, but as you can see with that highlight over there on the subtool, I've actually used the retopology brush to tweak the ZRemesh results to give me something that's workable. Obviously, that's a lot of wasted geometry over there. And you could tweak that, but the fact is that we can use retopology brush in conjunction with already existing tools within ZBrush that would allow you to basically, be more flexible in your retopology, right? And faster as well. So we're going to go through or try to go through all of that because, as you know, I'm a little bit Mr. Tangent, along with Mr. Paul Gabriel is also the one. Maybe he instilled this on me, but I go on tangents. So, but again, if you guys have any questions throughout this whole process, just let me know and I can cover a few things for you. I'm here. That's what I'm here for. You know, I could be doing this alone in my basement or whatever, or in the bunker, as I call this recording studio over here. I call it the Maxon bunker, where I'm just inside there all day, just sculpting. And doing some cool stuff and prepping tutorials for you guys as well. So again, any questions, just shoot it my way and I'll try to cover most I can. I'm looking at the chat every now and then, so yeah. So to make something like this, obviously there's a little bit of a process that is not really linear as you'd expect to make a bag such as this, right? We're taking advantage of some UVs, some surface noise, some cloth brushes, a little bit of some XMD brushes as well over here, and then using some IMM curve brushes to get this little stitching pattern over here. I don't know if this stitching pattern makes sense actually, but I wanted to test out some baking ability as well with my, you know, like with some color groups for substance, and then make some variations of it, right? This is the point of this, is being as non-destructive as possible, so it speeds up our workflow, and we can make a bunch of variations based on those. So I want to go ahead and start from scratch to do this. Also, another thing I wanted to cover, and you guys let me know which one do you guys prefer, but I also made this little bag over here, this basket, which is used to store more like raw materials and stuff, like in medieval times, stuff that doesn't get leaked, like, you know, like maybe some fruit, maybe some vegetables or whatever, maybe something that's a little bit harder, not as soft, like, you know, or maybe not as small, like grain or rice or whatever. So this is using micropoly, and we can go through that process of making our own micropoly mesh, such as this one, and then baking this down into a micropoly usable mesh that is just going to get repeated all over the surface, right? Now, actually, let's start with that one. That would be a cool little segue into this. This poly paint doesn't matter as much because we're going to texture it in something like Substance anyway. So there's going to be a little bit of a pipeline workflow here between ZBrush and Substance. But yeah, so first of all, let's start with a basic cylinder. And if you've listened and heard and saw the last stream, and if you haven't, it's saved here on YouTube, so you can always check it out after I streamed. I like to start off with real world scale, just because if we're working for a game, if we're working for VFX, if we're working for anything that is involving UVs in some extent, then we need to have real world scale, right? Yeah, I know. It's this little thing. It's covering up my face. Dude, I have no other way because the camera is there. So I would have to do a little bit of setup adjustment here. But bear with me. I mean, I'm here. Hey, don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. And I can see the chat anyway. So, okay. So we start off with a basic cylinder 3D. Let's go make Polymesh 3D over here. I like to start using these primitives as soon as possible. So I'm going to go ahead with this cylinder 3D, and I'm going to go like this, right? I'm going to add a few subdivisions over here. We don't like that top part as much, but it doesn't really matter for our purposes at the moment. Turn off perspective just to check the proportions. And I want this to be how tall? I don't know, half a meter. Let's say half a meter. So what I need to do is I'm going to go here and dock my Z plugin. In case you haven't done this, just click that little button over there and drag it over here. It was already docked, but I wanted to show you guys. So opening up Z plugin over here, I just have a sip of water. You know, in case you'd watch my live recording and be upset. Just let you know. Yeah. Don't worry, I know that. It's a whole setup thing. So, yeah. So, all right. So we have this, and now the first thing I'm gonna do is actually go to Scale Master over here. And Scale Master works, and I'm going to keep repeating this because I get these questions even from studios and professional artists all the time. Like, how do I scale my things to be real world scale? Or even worse, I get people saying that ZBrush doesn't work with real scale, which is bonkers because there's a whole industry that literally relies on ZBrush, which is for 3D printing, collectibles, miniatures, tabletop, that require actually the sculpts to be in real world scale. And you can also watch Ian Robinson's stream this week, actually it was yesterday, where he's going through his own project where he's doing actual keying for 3D printing. 3D printing his mimic character, and he actually talks a little bit about scaling and how to measure and how to tweak the ruler from transpose to represent real world measurements, so you can do like dilations and stuff like that. So there's a whole range of techniques there for 3D printing. But for me, from a gaming perspective, I have my Unreal mannequin here as well. So in order for me to check, I can set the scene scale So I'm going to set the scene scale, and I'm going to tell it, oh wait, okay, I want to work in centimeters, right? I don't want this to be, so currently we're working in 0.8 millimeters. This is, by default, ZBrush works a very, very small scale, right? Because it just performs better. But in our case, we really don't care. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 0.8 centimeters. And now you can see the units in the scene are treating this in the world of centimeters, right? It's better to keep it to a metric system. If you're from the United States, I know you guys use inches and feet and whatever. If you're working with UVs, go metric, right? Because it makes more sense for like textile density and stuff like that. So if we're doing this, right? So then if I click sliders to subtool size, these sliders are going to snap back to the ratio that I have here. So if I tweak this, right, and I'm going to turn off that ratio button, whoops, cancel, sorry, and I change this, and then I click sliders to subtool size, it's going to default my sliders to the current scale of my model, right? Now I'm going to gauge this by height, so I'm going to go click this ratio button. So any change I make here is going to also change the X and Z axis. And then what I need to do is actually go ahead and say, okay, I want 50 centimeters, right? And now I want to make sure that this all is on. Not that we have any other subtools, but let's say, imagine we're scaling this after we model things, but this can happen. We have to turn this on so every other subtool gets scaled proportionally. Let me show you what I mean. So if I insert another subtool, let's say a sphere, and it's, I don't know, this size over there, and I want to make sure that this selected subtool now, we have two subtools, is 50 centimeters tall, right? So I'm going to go here, 50 centimeters, and then I want to have this on and click resize subtool. It's going to give you an error saying, hey, this is above 100 units, and this could have some issues with ZBrush. So it needs to unify the scale. So I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, it resized everything, including that sphere. It's still in the same ratio. It's just that now if I click sliders to subtool size, it's giving me 50 centimeters. So this is actually 50 centimeters. But now the problem is my brush gets changed as well. Well, actually it unified it. But in case the brush gets too small, just click ZBrush Scale Unify, and the brush will be back to default, right? And your scale will retain that real world scale. So now we're working real world scale, right? Again, I just mentioned this. I thought I would go on a tangent here a little bit just because I get that question a lot, even from working professional artists. And it's not that it bothers me, but it's like, you know, there is a way to do this. So that's actually my job. That's why I got the job. It's because I like to show like ways that you can do stuff in ZBrush that people think impossible, basically. So yeah, so we have this little thing over here, and I want to actually delete those edge loops. So I'm going to go real quick to my Z modeler brush, insert edge loop, Alt, and then just start deleting those edge loops over there, delete those edge loops over there. And now I want to make sure that I'm going to paint a separate polygroup over here. Let me just go ahead, polygroup, flat island, go and select a few of these, and now we have 3 polygroups, right? I want to make sure that this is actually getting that micro poly asset. So I'm going to turn on dynamic subdivision by pressing D, right? And I want to add some creasing. So I'm going to go to geometry, go to crease, go to crease PG, because we have polygroups over there. And I'm going to lower this down to like maybe 2, and then go to my dynamic subdivisions, and I want to turn on micro poly. And you can see micro poly is off. If I press on, I have to choose some sort of mesh. If I turn on this weave, now we get this model just completely flooded with this, replaced actually. Every quad gets replaced with that mesh, right? The same thing goes on the top, but we don't really care about the top. We care about this side over here. Now the scale is set to 1, so the lower polygon it is, it's going to get a little stretched. So if you want to keep this ratio, you can just reduce the scale a little bit, and you can see that. And now if we add some smooth subdivisions, we're starting to get this, but at its core, this is not actual geometry. You can see my Z modeler is still hovering over those low polygon quads, right? Meaning that I can go over here with my dynamics, my dynamic subdivision, my gizmo deformers, And I can start tweaking this. I can start going to my deformer and then going like, okay, maybe I want this to be a little thicker in the middle, or maybe I want some extra divisions here. I want to make this a little thicker, maybe this a little thinner, so something like this, for example. And then this top one as well could be a little thinner. And now we have this weird, I don't know what it is. So we have this weird kind of a shape, right? But it's still not changing anything over there because this is not actual geometry. I could turn it on and off, right? Now, the cool thing about this is that obviously we have some reference. I have a few references here that I gathered for the other project. Let me just open up PureRef. In this case, I'm using PureRef. I could use Spotlight, but I want you guys to actually see like what I'm doing. So I'm going to use PureRef on another screen. And let me open this up. Props and where is it? Oh, wow. Did I not save that? That is interesting. Bada bing, bada boom. No, this is the modular kit. I got a few references here for the modular kit. We got a few references here for other props. That's interesting. Let me go check here real quick. I think I stored it. I must have stored it on my Pinterest, and then I didn't save my PureRef. Because I use Pinterest in conjunction with PureRef all the time. Just create mood boards and stuff. So go to medieval props. There it is. Okay, there's this medieval prop over here. Let me just bring it here. You can see that, right? So we have to figure out this little pattern over here. And we want to model this, right? So if you want to have your own custom pattern for micropoly, what you'd want to do is you want to actually model that on a separate tool, right? So let's say I have this over here, and you want to model that in the square pattern, and then you need these to be open so it welds together, right? So now we go over here, and what I usually do if you want to do this from scratch, let's do this from scratch, right? I want to grab a plane 3D, and you can see it's the same ratio. This is ideal for ZBrush to understand, okay, there's 0 to 1 here, and I have my plane 3D, make polymesh 3D, and I'm going to call this, let me just rename this, because I have a bad habit of not renaming my subtools. I know, don't judge me, don't burn me at the stake, but, so let's call this micro poly plane, right? And doesn't matter the subdivisions. This is just so I can keep my sanity and see where it tiles. It actually is going to tile, because basically what we're doing is a tileable texture, but it's not really a texture, it's a mesh, right? So I have this over here, and now what I need to think of is I'm going to look at my reference, and I'm going to start by maybe inserting, I don't know, some like a cylinder 3D. And now this cylinder 3D, I can go and rotate it like that. And I want to scale it, whoops, a daisy. I want to scale it like so, maybe to like 1/10 of it, right? And it has some subdivisions, so that's cool. And now what we can do is we can go and preview this, by the way. This is something I do all the time, and you know I'm a big fan. It's array mesh, right? So I'm going to use array mesh to preview this tiling, right? So first of all, I want to make sure that I'm using 2 of these. So I'm going to go and turn on array mesh. In my case, I have a hotkey assigned to that, Alt-A, but it's over here under a tool palette. And I want to make sure that I'm locking my position and locking size, because I want to make sure that even if I go over this, it's not going to shift my instances, right? Because array mesh is an instancing system, right? Something that still causes a lot of doubt these days. It would be good to get a whole tutorial for it. Yeah, sure. That's something that I get all the time, for sure. That would justify eventually a tutorial on it. Yeah, for sure. Dude, I have stuff cooking. Let me say that I have some stuff cooking, and obviously we have a whole strategy here for Maxon for pipelines and stuff. Technically, my role is a solutions expert, and that's the sort of stuff that I need to work on, like pipeline solutions, workflows, and so I have thought about that. Yeah, for sure. So there are a few tutorials already out there that cover ScaleMaster their Ask ZBrush, like old tutorials when Scale Master was released by Joseph Drust. You guys can check that out if you just type in Scale Master. Even Michael Pavlovich has a lot of tutorials on Scale Master and scaling on his YouTube channel, so you can also check that out. I know that I learned through those, like Scale Master, you know, and how that works. So yeah, so we have this, and now I'm gonna go and offset this by 2. Now we have 2 of these, right? And now we want to check this and go, okay, I want to make sure that you can see that it's locked size. So if I scale it up, it's gonna start clipping, right? But that is okay. I don't want to lock size right now. So if I start scaling, you can see the other one just goes and keeps that threshold, that distance over there. So I'm gonna go, I don't know, maybe something like this, right? Whoops. So something like this. And then I want to append a new one, right? And now I want to go and offset it down over here. Let's say 2. And now I want to make sure, actually not 2, let's do 3. So there's a gap of 1 in the middle. And now I want to lock size, after the fact, after this, right? And now I want to lock size. And now I want to append a new one. And I'm going to offset it to the side by 2. Actually, not by 2, by 4. There you go. So that is it. If we go to our transpose line, click transpose, you can see this is where the pivot is. And now we need to make sure that these actually weld together. So for that, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and select, I have the clip curve brush. Let's just go to select lasso, select that edge, and then Control Shift S to scale it down. And I want to delete those. So let's go that. Geometry. I'm going to go to modify topology. Not mirror and weld. That's wrong. Delete hidden. So now this will weld with our micro poly, right? Cool. All right. So another thing that I want to make sure is that I have another cylinder, and I need to model this on a single subtool, by the way. This is the tricky part that a lot of people get confused about micro poly. Like, you have one subtool that you can target over here, and basically micro poly from this other asset is gonna target the tool that is active over there, right? So if I go over here and let me just control drag this and duplicate this, and now I'm gonna split this unmasked to a separate subtool, and then later I'm gonna basically merge them together, right? So I'm gonna bring this to this. You can see that if I click home, it basically matches the ratio of that initial plane perfectly, right? So let's go move this over here to the side, go back to my array mesh, and let me delete this one, delete that one, and I just want to work on one of these, right? Now if I go over to this, I can see that this is a little like too thick for my taste, so I can scale it down to like 0.5 maybe, something like this, right? And you can check what I did before, like over here, and you can see there's like 2 of these, and then there's these that I get duplicated actually, and you can see it's a single subtool, so like that. And now what I want to do over here on this one is that first and foremost, let me go to my first transform stage, and I want to transform this by 1. There we go. So now it kind of matches over here. And now the second one, I want to transform this also by 1, but I want to mirror in the z-axis. And why is that? Because I'm going to do stuff like this. I'm going to do stuff like this. Like that. And then I'm going to move this. Like so. Right? And then we can actually model this by hand and stuff. So... and then you can see that the one on the bottom is gonna push to the other side because it's basically mirrored, right? So we have something like this going on, And then over here, what I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna also scale this down to 0.5. And let's actually move this manually. It doesn't need to be perfect again. So I can duplicate this, move it like by what? By 1 maybe? Yeah, by 1. By 1 is perfect. So like that. There we go. Now we have these two, which are perfect because you need to have some geometry, so it actually bends and stuff. Or at least it bends properly. And now what we can do is actually go overhead with our move infinite depth and just start smoothing out some of these. You don't need to be perfect. One of the things I want to keep in mind is that I don't want to mess up with that edge over there. So I'm gonna go to masking and then go mask by feature, turn off everything except border, and now it's gonna mask that border, right? So now I'm sure that nothing I do here is gonna affect that border, meaning that I can just move stuff around, whoops, like that, and then like this, right? And then we can push this up like that, and then we can play around with this because again, it's gonna be kind of organic. So if I press the D key, you can see it's not, well, it's actually changing that because of there's no caps, right? So I could actually even close the holes and then delete it afterwards, but whatever. So this is interesting. And now the same thing goes over here. Let me go to a bigger brush and mask by feature, and then just start pushing this out the other way. So it'd be pushing this out like that, pushing this out like that. We could also just mask this. Let me just do the same thing I did before. So Control Z, mask that, actually clear that mask, mask that, and then see, actually, I want that, I want that, and I want that. I want these two, and I want to move this out, flip that over, blur that mask a little bit, and then just go like that, right? And then we can tweak that however we want. Again, mask by feature. This is probably a little too intense, so because it's low poly, I want to make sure that this is kind of like stretched over there. So now we have something like this. Now I want to make sure that this plane is turned off so I can see what it's actually doing. So it'd be something like this. And now for these, I want to go to my array mesh, and I want to actually, before this one, do I append? No, not append, sorry. Go over here and click insert. So it's going to insert below that. And so not destroying the tiling one. And then I'm going to go and offset by the y-axis. And I can turn back on that plane, which is useful. I could actually move this plane back a little bit. There we go. And bada bing, bada boom. Let me just check the chat real quick. I love all you guys chat. Yeah, there's a lot of love going on in the chat. Yeah, okay. So, another thing I want to do is I want to move this, whoops, not this one, but this one. I want to make sure that it goes all the way to the top, at least almost to the top. And you can check if it actually fits by clicking this transparency button with ghost on. There's a little bit of some messiness happening over there because of the moving, but I guess it's fine. It doesn't need to weld on top to bottom unless we're talking about that. So we can actually just do a little bit like that of a gap, right? Go over here, turn off that transparency, and I want to make sure that this gets to like 1. Let me just turn on. I have transpose on, so I can do this and move this exactly there, right? And now let me think. I can actually do 3. Now let's go like that. And now I want to make sure that this gets scaled down to like 75, not 75, but something like 66. There we go. Something like that. Doesn't need to be perfect, right? So now I'm going to tweak this to be a little tighter, something like that. Same thing goes for the other transform. And move it up like that. And same for the third transform stage. Let me just control, go to solo mode. So yeah, beat that. That's not that bad, right? It's still missing these things over here. And obviously then this gap gets a little too harsh, so I'm gonna go in and do that. Maybe I scaled it too much. Let me just go ahead and scale it up again. Actually, let me control Z, all of that. Before I scaled it back down, because you can see there's a little bit of an issue here with the ratio and proportions. But it's fine, I guess. I guess we could do 2. Because if you look at what I did before, there's literally just 4 of those. So technically, you know, we could just, let me just delete that last append. Delete this one. And we technically could just scale it up by 1.5 and then just go over here. I think this would work. Let's go check this. Sorry. And bada bing, bada boom. Move this over here. Go ahead and move this over here. And it's done. So then this one actually I can delete and check. Yeah, this is not gonna work. Doesn't matter though. I can still just fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so let's do this again. Let's try to match this as much as we can. There we go. So that's half of it, and then append the new one, and then just go and move it down. And now I want to make sure the lock size is off, and it's gonna ruin everything. Of course it is. Let's just go and move this down like that. And let's take care of this scale. So 1 over here, 1 over here, and 1 over here. And now I'm gonna move this all the way. Something like that. And something like that. And this one gets moved over there. Yeah. And then we can tweak this by hand. Obviously, you don't need to be precious about this. We can actually just move stuff and make it a little thicker in some places, a little less thick. And then I'm gonna go, if I scale this on that axis over there and then move it, you can see like we can go manual. It doesn't need to be perfect. There we go. As long as it's within that square, that's fine, right? Right, so now what I need to do is actually I'm gonna mask this off and I'm gonna play around with it a little bit. So I'm gonna go over here, maybe move it over there. Whoops, I don't want that piece over there. So I'm gonna move it in, move it that way. Same thing goes over here. So I want to move it that way and move it in. So it'd be something like this, right? And then Control H to see without masks, right? Without masking. I don't know if this is working. I actually think I need to make this differently. I'm gonna have to Mask this area off. And push it like that. Mask that border. Make sure that border is masked. Let's go. I don't like that. Okay, let's just replace this with another cylinder. So if I replace it with my gizmo, it still retains that array mesh. So I'm gonna go like that and like this. It's perfect, actually. Scale it up. So we can go like that. Turn on that transparency. Make sure that we have that clipped over there and clipped over there. I'm just holding control, by the way, so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. And now, turning off that transparency, let's make this over here. Check. Yep, perfect. Just do that. Just a lot of manual tweaking in my case because I didn't plan this out properly. Let me go to my plane 3D and let's just add some thickness so I can see it a little better. So I'm gonna go to geometry, dynamic subdivision, node smooth, and a little bit of thickness. So you can see that this is actually not completely matching. I'm gonna go and put my gizmo over there. There we go. We want to make sure it's inside that square-ish shape. Yeah, that's fine. Doesn't matter. So now what I want to do is actually go and select this, push this up, do that, and then go to my masking again. Mask border. Is it masked? Well, I guess it is. And just move it in. Should be something like this. I want to crease PG. Actually, there's no crease PG here. Let me just do that. Flipping my mask, crease PG. You know what, that crease level would be like this. Actually, not crease PG. I want to crease that by angle, but whatever. I'm gonna move this up ever so slightly, and now I want to make sure that this goes like that. It doesn't need to be perfect as long as it's showcasing that. And then the same thing goes over here. What I want to do is I want to maybe do a little bit of a bleed in that mask, and then just move it back ever so slightly, like so. And again, I can go move infinite depth and then just start manually moving. Whoops, before any of that, mask that border, guys. There's no border. Of course there's no border. I'm dumb, sorry. No border because they're caps. So I'm gonna go and move that a little bit. Like that. And now it's actually making a little bit more sense, right? Now if I go to my array mesh, I'm gonna append a new one and just offset this using my transpose. Offset it by 2. And it's tileable. Right, so now what do I need to do in order to get this as a micro poly? Well, first of all, I need to start applying this. So I'm gonna make mesh a couple of times here, like that. So now all we have left is this tiling kind of preview. And then what we can do is we want to delete those caps. Don't forget those caps, guys. So Control Shift S, and then geometry modify topology delete hidden. Same thing goes over here on this one, right? This one is actually a little tighter, which I'm not so sure that I like. So I'm gonna go, there's a couple of these. I'm actually gonna change this to just this cylinder 3D. Scale it down to like 0.525. Move it all the way over there. Scale it up. So now we have the ability to check if it's within that. So we can just go over and then go use our clip curve brush and just clip that. Or we can actually go, let me see. So like that, there we go. There we go. Now if I go transform, I want to make sure that this is also matching. So I'm gonna go and mask that. And does this work? Yeah, let's go over here and clip that. Okay. So we're gonna go over here actually. Hold control on that scale. Make sure it's matching, right? Same thing goes on this side. And then just make sure. Whoops. Select those edges over there. And then just scale it. Stuff like that. Let's see if it works. It's a little bit half-assed, but let's see if it actually works. Something like that. And now the same thing goes for this one. I want to duplicate this one. Bring it over there. Doesn't need to be perfect. Get rid of those. Get rid of those caps. So now you can see I have the cap selected. Geometry modify topology delete hidden. And now over here, I want to merge this down. So I'm going to go to merge down. And there we go. And now we have this tileable pattern, which we can actually preview if it looks good on the top as well. So I'm going to go and lock size. And I'm going to go and offset by 2. Whoops. Append a new one, actually. And offset this by 2. Yeah, this looks what? Actually, it's not 2. It's a little bit more. It's 4. There we go, 4. Because when we locked position, it was in the state where we had half of this, right? So there we go. This is looking pretty nice, and I guess we can, because this has polygroup. Actually, it didn't. It didn't get me polygroups. So what I need to do is actually just select these, Control Shift A, Control W, and now we have 2 separate polygroups. I'm gonna go like this. Flip this over, and I want to start pushing this in, so it's not as, you know, like not as round. Let's say the middle could be round, but then the rest I don't really like it when it's round. So there we go. So now if we turn this off, this is our micro poly mesh, right? And what we can do is now we have this on the top of our subtool palette, and then if we go, where is it? Oh Jesus, there's a lot of tools. There we go. This is our little micro poly demo that we had before. And now if I go over here, turn on that micro poly back on, and now if I go over here and click, whoops, I click Control and tap, it's going to bring up my tool palette, right? And now if I just select that, it's going to replace that with the mesh that we just created. So now we have a little bit of a basket pattern going on. And again, you can make your library, like a whole library of like patterns for micro poly. And this is actual geometry, meaning that you could say, okay, can I just make this pattern like Substance? You can, definitely. The problem is if you're using, let's say you're using something in production where you're like using an RGB workflow and you have a smart material that just applies those RGB masks based off of your bakes, right? Your curvature maps, your ambient occlusion, and all that. You wanted to capture those little, basically crevices and all of that, and those edges. So it is absolutely imperative that you actually have that as a mesh and not just a pattern. Obviously, you could do some tricks in Substance with anchor points and all of that, but it's still not going to get true curvature through true ambient occlusion. So it's up to you. If obviously in a real scenario, unless this is a super important mesh, you would just have a tileable texture. Let's just call it that. It's just a tileable texture where you just make a very base model and then just unwrap that on top of that tileable texture. That's it. I'm showing you the sculptural way, where you can go and use this for, let's say, more of a hero prop or something like that, right? So one of the things that we notice is that this pattern is actually rotated, right? It's not really in the correct orientation. So what we need to do is actually go over here, and you can see we have this rotate Z and rotate X. We want to spin this on the Z. So if you click, it's the local Z of each face, right? Because remember, we're still working on this low poly kind of thing. So it's looking at each one of these polygons individually and rotating it. It's an instancing system as well, right? So we can do this. Let's go and actually do smooth by 1 so it looks a little better, right? Something like this. And then we can actually round this surface, right? We can smooth this out. Now, one of the things I'm noticing over here is that this is too flat. So what I want to do is I want to actually do some modeling over here. I want to go, again, because we're still in low polygon mode, I can still go over here and tweak my mesh and still preview what it's going to look like. If I do something like that, Control H, because I don't like to see that mask, especially when I'm working on something like this. So yeah, let's say we have something like this. This is fine. Now, one of the things that you notice is that our pattern is too flat. It's too samey, right? And if you look at our reference, over here, there's some of those are a little more like chunky, and the others are thinner, and some of them are slightly offset. It's not like it's perfect because it's handmade, right? So what we can do, because of this non-destructive, again, what we can do is we can go over here and we can tweak our mesh. Not this one, sorry. This is the one we made, because you can see this is too straight, and this one has some breakup. You can see it has some breakup on its side, and it has some poly paint as well, some dark colors over here. And if we go over here now and we want to go and select our move topological brush, and again, super important that we actually go over here to our masking and mask by feature border, so the borders don't get touched. So now we can go and with our move topological and start just breaking this up ever so slightly, like that, you know, like just moving stuff around, maybe going with our inflate brush with a very low intensity and just start inflating that, then pressing Alt to deflate that, inflate that, deflate that, inflate that. So you can see we're getting a very, very different sort of result. So I'm going to do this over here. So it's a little bit of a breakup, right? There's not a lot, but it's enough that we can start, you know, there's some clipping over here maybe. And if I press this, you can see that it's not really a straightish pattern, right? So I can, you know, again, inflate that and then smooth it out maybe. Inflate and then smooth it out. Alt press inflate and then smooth it out again, because I don't want it to be like bulging as well, right? So keep that in mind. Pro Gaming, hey, how are you doing? ZBrush, yes, this is ZBrush. This is ZBrush in action. So we have something like this, right? I'm gonna try to skim through this. Let me just turn off that dynamic because we don't need it for this case. And now let's say I want to have, let me just mask by feature border, and let's go to poly paint, go to paint mode. And I want to start like just painting. Actually, I want to paint a black color and just randomly just going like this. And then I want to flip this over and I want to have a white color. So I could just have some depth variation to over here, and then Alt, whoops, and then keep doing that. Actually, Alt over here. I want this to be brighter, this to be darker. This is just so we can have a little bit of a preview of what you're gonna get once you bake, and then you get that ambient occlusion. So you can actually just very quickly over here, go over here. And if you want this to only affect the mesh that you're touching on, you can still go even in your paintbrush over here to auto masking under the brush palette and turn on that topological. So now if I press here, I'm only basically painting on the first mesh that I actually touched, as long as it's not welded topologically. So I can go over here, I can go over here. So something like this, right? Would be nice. Something like this. And now let's go back to our subtool where we had this little basket going. Turn off that and let me flip that color because there has no color. And you can see the difference immediately. If I have this over here and I just replace this pattern with this one, and again, rotate Z, and have the poly paint on, this is probably a little too much. So I'm probably gonna have to go in here and just basically erase, basically erase some of that. And this is probably a little too much. So something like that. And again, let me turn off that topological on. So let me just bring back some of those highlights just ever so slightly, and then do a little bit here. This would be better to see if you have like a skin shade, the skin shade 4 on, because it only shows you, well, almost only shows you like the color information. So you have something like this, and something like that. There we go. And now if we go back here and let's replace this again, Control tap that one, rotate in the Z. That scale is a little too, if I do 1, you can see that's a little more chunky, which is exactly what we want. We want this little basket pattern. So going over here, you can see that again, we're going to bake this, so the poly paint doesn't really matter, right? You can bake that as well as a color ID, but there you go. So this is the basic understanding of the pattern, right? And now all we need to take into account is the edge flow, right? Because this is weird because it's triangles and it's going this way, right? So what we want for like the lid would be basically a separate subtool where I can just go with my Z modeler, go over here to Q Mesh Polygroup Island, and just do this and hold Control. And I'm just splitting up that little island, which I can then Control Shift tap and then just go and split hidden. And now we have a separate subtool that inherits every single thing in the tool palette. Meaning if I turn on that dynamic subdivision, it's still giving me the same micro poly settings that I had, including the mesh that it's sourcing, right? So eventually we're gonna delete that cap on this one. So now over here, what I can do is actually I can add a few edges over here. So I can do, let me just go with my Z modeler brush, and I'm gonna insert an edge loop. Whoops, I'm gonna go and inset that polygroup island, go over here, do this to maybe like that, right? If I turn on that micro poly, you can see over here it's looking a little bit better. It's still not perfect though. I might need to change this to a different cylinder. So I'm gonna go cylinder 3D. And now I'm gonna change these to be like 32. You need a little bit of geometry over there so it gets that rounding effect, right? Now, if I now delete this and just delete that, go ahead and geometry modify topology delete hidden. I'm just using my hotkeys, but I'm telling you where those buttons are. So scale this down, micro poly, and we get a little bit of a nice pattern like that. Now, if you find that some of these are kind of flipped differently, and you can see that there's a little bit of that geometry weirdness happening over there, just go here and try to tap align to check if they're actually working. If it's not working, it's probably because there's not this polygon is more stretched than that. So what I would do is actually I would go and insert an edge loop over there, and now we have snapping ability, so you can just go like this, tap Control, and snaps over there in the middle. So now you get something like this. And I'm gonna delete the center. Actually, I don't need it, so I'm gonna delete hidden. And one of the things I can do is I can Z-remesh this. I can go over here and have a little poly group over there. I have a little poly group. I'm doing this by hand because I'm stupid. So there we go. And let me just save this real quick so I don't have any unpleasant surprises later down the line. We have a little bit of an audience here. That's cool. It's good to know. Guys, if you're, feel free to type in any questions on the chat, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And I'm trying to avoid big tangents here because I want to keep this to the stream. The topic of the stream is making baskets, bags, whatever in ZBrush. And then part 2 would be getting them game ready, right? So we have something like this already, which is working pretty well. So I'm going to not smooth this actually. Maybe make it a little flatter. So let's say 0.8, something like this. That works good. It works well. And now we have a little bit of a lid happening over there. So now we can go back to our other subtool. We can delete this one, actually. We can delete this cap over here. So I'm going to go delete polygroup island, and just delete that one. And now if I turn on that, we have a little bit of a lid happening. And I'm going to show you how I made the little, like, basically the rope going around the thing. But for now, this is our base, right? We want to do this, and let me just scale it up ever so slightly. Now, one of the things I can do that I was going to show you is I can go to my ZRemesher over here. This is why I did those polygroups. So I can go to my ZRemesher, and I want to keep groups because I want to retain that edge flow, right? I want it to go around that. So I'm going to use the polygroups. I'm going to go and smooth these groups by 0.1. I don't want to smooth them too much because this is too low poly. It could ruin a lot of the things that we have. So no adaptive size. I want the polygons to be almost the same size, like ratio, like squarish. And then let's just run a same and run ZRemesher. And there you go. And now they're a little bit more even. And I guess this is the best that ZBrush can do because it's funneling in, right? So it's not going to be perfect, right? And there we go. So now we have this turning on, and you can see that kind of messed up the polygon orientation. You can see that's all over the place. If that happens to you, you just need to go over to our geometry. Where's my, oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. Dynamic subdivision, and click this align. So now they all face the same direction, the same poly order, right? And now it's fixed. So we go over here, and we have this little basket. Now the cool thing is this is non-destructive, meaning that I can go like this, right? And then just duplicate this, or actually duplicate the actual subtool. So let's duplicate this, go like that, and then just change my model. Let me say, let's say I change my mind. I want this to be maybe a little thicker. I want this to be a little, let me just smooth it out. Actually, I want to turn on that, go to transform, activate symmetry, y-axis radial, and let me just start smoothing this out, right? So sort of like this, so I don't get, let me just go like that and like that, and smoothing that out. This is probably too intense, so I'm gonna smooth that out. Let go of shift once you press, so now it's a different sort of, I don't know, a basket kind of a thing. Again, we're still working on this very low polygon kind of mesh, right? Where we need and if you hold shift and tap and then let go of shift, it won't actually smooth. It will just relax the surface. And here's a cool example of how this could be used. If you're a games artist listening right now, pay close attention. I don't do the look up here like Paul does, but pay close attention, right? So this is for you, all of you games artists out there. Let's say I want to have some quick UVs on this so I can apply a pattern instead of using micropoly, right? So what I want to do, first of all, I'm going to do this with my Z modeler. So I'm going to go to this point and go crease, shortest path, type that point, tap that point. Now we have a little crease over there. And I'm going to go down in my tool palette, go to UV map, and under crease unwrap, I'm going to basically unwrap based on creased edges. So I basically told ZBrush where I want my seam. So now if I unwrap and then turn off that bump, morph UVs, I get this weird kind of a thing where, well, it's unfolded, and we can test that out if we go to our texture map and apply like this checker pattern, and let's unmorph this. And okay, it's actually not bad. It doesn't have a lot of stretching, but we have a little bit of a problem here. We have the shell itself, like the UV shell, is tilted. It's not straight. So it's not perfect, and it's never going to be perfect, by the way, because again, this is made so you can do some quick UVs and then shoot it to something like substance or whatever. So what I can do is I can actually go over here with my gizmo, because there's two different poly groups. I can just hold control, tap that, and just rotate that. And if I unmorph, actually not morph, sorry. I need to go to UV Master. UV Master allows you to do this. So I go to UV Master, and whoops. Oh, if it's not showing, there's a bug, actually. I need to report this. So you have to tap something and then the flatten appears. If I click flatten, I'll just go to solo mode. Control tap that. So now this is masked, and I'm just gonna straighten it manually, actually. So I'm gonna unmask this. Whoops, let me just unmask that. And use my gizmo to actually straighten out that edge. And the same thing goes over here. Again, this is a brute force kind of way of doing these things, but and then doing this, and as soon as you get the outer shell, let's say, to work properly. And one cool thing that you can do is you can actually still use your masking. So I can go and mask by border, and now it's masked that, right? And now I can go and mask this off as well. And I can go to deformation. Where's deformation? Deformation. And let me just save the project real quick. I mean, there was once when I was streaming and it crashed on me while I was doing the model. So never again. Save your projects, guys. I have autosave kind of turned off for the streaming for obvious reasons. So I have to keep reminding myself to save. Because ZBrush does autosave for you, and it saves everything every X amount of minutes. So okay, so now we have this, and I'm gonna go to, where's deformation? There we go. Wait, deformation. There we go. And I want to morph to grid. So if I morph this to grid, whoops, it requires a square. Okay, it doesn't work actually. Okay, let's see. Morph to grid. It requires a square plane. Yeah, it needs a square plane 3D. So relax the plane grid is also not gonna work. So I thought this would work, but it doesn't really matter though, because we can just mask this off. Do this manually. It's a little tedious, but once we do this, you'll see what I mean, right? So I go over here, do that. This is just so you make sure your pattern tiles, right? Again, it's not optimal. You would need to actually straighten this out and unfold it properly, but you can still do a lot with this. If you don't care about like cleanish UVs, you just want to test it out. You want to see it in game, you want to see it in the engine or after it's textured, just to show your art director or whatever. So then we have this, right? And here's a cool thing. I can use my smooth brush to smooth this out. Let me just up the intensity. And it's never going to smooth the border itself. That's why I was emphasizing that you want the border to be as flat as possible, right? So if I let go of shift, it's also not going to do anything, because this is basically individual polygons. So there you go. Now, obviously, we can go and do some crazy things with our Z modeler here for like morphing and stuff. So I can mask this edge loop complete. I can go over here and start masking this and go like that, and then just straighten it out, right? And then the same thing goes over here. This is old school stuff, right? It's old school stuff. I like old school workflow. So you could do this, and there you go. And now holding my shift key, I'm basically relaxing my geometry. And I made sure that this, whoops, not this, that this is now tileable, as long as it's matching that, right? So I can still use my clip curve brush. So I can do like clip curve, go like this, match that to the grid, go like this, whoops, match that to the grid, sorta match that to the grid, right? And then just relax that a little bit. It's gonna be stretchy over there, doesn't really matter. So do that. Whoops, a daisy, like this, and straighten that out, straighten it, there we go. Mask that, scale it down ever so slightly, so like that. Same thing goes, whoa, crazy. Sorry, I pressed my cam view. So I can go over here, select that, unmask those tips, and then just do this. And now smooth it again so it becomes as straight as possible, right? It's not perfect. Again, it's still not 100% straight, and you can spend a whole day here just doing this. But my point is that now if you unflatten this and you look at that texture, you go to texture map, turn that texture on, It's kind of tileable. It's, you know, like, where's the seam? You can't really, well, there it is. There's a little bit of a seam there. But it's way better than it was, right? And it's more straight, like the whole, the tiling pattern was straight. So there you go. So now, if we wanted to apply a pattern instead of that, we could still do that, right? Instead of using micro poly, we could just apply a pattern, right? So there we go. We have this now, and there's an issue there with my topology. Oh, it's the crease, of course. I can uncrease now. I don't need the crease anymore. So now, there we go. So now we have this. I don't want this bottom as well, so I can, whoops, wrong brush, select rect brush, and geometry modify topology, delete hidden. And now we have a different sort of pack. And now again, because we're still in very low polygon mode, we can still go to the deformer. This actually still works with higher polygons as well. So if I go like this and then just select that one and make it a little thicker, make this a little thicker, so something like that. Now we have a more standard kind of barrel, like basket, right? And same thing goes over here. And there we go. Something like this. And now if we want, let's say, okay, let's do another copy. Let's do like a smaller basket. Let's do something like, okay, subtool, duplicate, and then again, a new one. And now I have this, which I can just go ahead and do like, okay, I just want this bottom part like that, right? Delete hidden. And I want to make sure that let me just mask this and move this individually. So it'd be something like this, something like this. Or I could actually go over here and just delete, basically because I'm using low poly, I can use Z modeler for this. Insert, delete that edge, delete those edges, and then go multiple edge loops. And do not crease, then click keep poly group, and there we go. Like that, right? You want these to be fairly square, so maybe that is fine. Again, if we press micro poly and still getting this, right? So, and you could delete that after the fact. That stretching over there is what's bothering me. I think it's because of that. You know, like I can crease these, and now we have a little bit of a, it's the same over here. So you can see, because if we turn off micro poly over here, if we turn off micro poly, when you don't have a cap, it's just an open, not a watertight mesh, right? When you smooth it out, it's actually gonna, you see, like there's an offset there because it's trying to average out the polygons. The way to work around this is actually to crease that open border. So I'm gonna crease this. Now I have double turned on. Actually, I shouldn't have double turned on. I'm gonna turn off double in my display properties. And I want this actually to go ahead and do something like that, so it's a little different. So now if I do this and actually turn on micro poly, you can see that there's no longer those small little polygons on the tip stretching. So now I can do crazy stuff with this. I can go here and maybe I could even do I can do a little bit of a deformer, and I want one single edge on the middle. This is sort of like your lattice deformer, right? Whoops, like the masking, and then just start doing something like this, for example, right? And the same thing goes, whoops, I pressed the wrong one, so masking. And then I want to do something like this, maybe something like this. And the cool thing is, because we're low poly, I could still just go over here, insert another edge loop, you know, and then just go and select this and go, I don't know, something crazy like that, right? I don't want to do that, actually. I want this to be fairly simple. So something like this, right? Where you'd have a smaller kind of basket, right? Keeping the same ratio. As long as the polygons are sort of the same ratio, you can see like they're sort of the same size. They're probably not exactly, but I mean, I could add a few edge loops here in the middle. So I could go with my radial symmetry on. Let me see, how many of these do I have? Let's see. Transform, I want to do, I don't remember how many of these. Let me just let me try this out. Let me just duplicate this. Go to my Slender 3D. Actually, this is not the Slender 3D, so it's useless. So let me just actually, I can just do a divide, a flat divide, delete lower, and now I have more geometry. And now I can try to guess, I guess, how many of these do I have? Let's say this is 16. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I would say 17. And there we go. And now we can mask this. So I'm gonna mask that edge loop, flip that over, and now I can just scale it like that. See? And now we have a little bit of a thing going on over here where I don't need to smooth any extra, you know. And the same thing goes over here. I can mask this one off, mask this one off, and mask this one off. So basically adding a mask to your selection, just scale it up ever so slightly. I can also control drag. Whoops, not control drag. Shift, and it's basically inflating. Let me just actually inflate is control drag on the middle. Just inflate it a little bit, and we have sort of like even polygons. And there we go. We have a nice shape. And these are baskets, right? And then obviously the middle, I cheated a little bit. There's like a wooden thing where I'm just sculpting a wooden pattern kind of a thing. And then around these edges, because these are pretty much non-destructive in a sense, right? What I want to do is let me just, first of all, I can duplicate this because this is the same ratio. You could easily just go like that. In a game, you'd probably reuse that anyway, right? So again, this is true to scale as well. If you remember right, in the beginning, we did this. So if I click sliders to subtool, this is actually 60, which is shouldn't. Actually 60 millimeters. It's wrong again. So I'm going to do 60 centimeters. And this one should be, oh yeah, because I scaled it up a little bit. Actually, I scaled it exactly to 60, which is kind of crazy. So if I do 50 with all resize subtool, it's resizing everything. So now I'm pretty sure that I changed my actual size of this. And I want 0.5 meter because I know I'm going to pack these all into the same texture. Right? So when you apply textile density, it would scale your shells to the correct proportion in relation to the actual size of the model. So this would be something that would need to be packed together, right? So something like this. Obviously, this basket's kind of weird. Nobody would make a basket like this, but I was just showing what you could do, right? So the same thing goes over here. I want to basically go and actually duplicate this, go ahead and do like a Slender 3D. And it still has micro poly turned on, so I'm gonna split unmask points, go over here, turn off that dynamic symmetry, dynamic subdivision, make sure it's actually matching that width, and then go over here and like that. And this is gonna be our kind of like wooden little handle, because again, a lot of these references are just, you can see that they're CG and people just apply a tileable texture, but because it's a converging to a point, it gets really weird in the middle where everything sort of interlocks in a weird stretchy way. If you want to avoid showing that, just have a little bit of an asset, another model that's going to be baked in the middle, where you can actually, you know, then sculpt this, which is ideal. So I don't want that many edge loops. I can actually get away with that. And now we can actually extrude something like this. So let me think. What can we do here? Let me just go ahead and use my Z modeler. And I'm going to Q-mesh, polyloop, polyloop over there. Something like that. And now I want to inset my, again, another thing that I can do is, okay, I want to inset polygroup island, and this is, I'm going to use this all the time, so I can just press that little plus icon and I can save a preset. So I'm going to call it inset PG island, and now if I click save, every time I do this, there's my preset. So now let's say I do this together with, this is polygon actions, by the way. So together with QMesh single poly, let's say I want a QMesh single poly. So I'm going to go and create a new preset. So I'm going to QMesh single and then press save. And now if I go to my presets, I can just switch on the fly between one or the other. So now I'm insetting, and then I'm just QMeshing a single, and I'm also QMeshing the polygroup island a lot. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go QMesh polygroup island, right? And then just save that again. And again, keeping the same convention, QMesh PG island. Same convention, right? And now go save. Now if I go over here, there you go. QMesh single, QMesh PG island, QMesh island, and you can still go over here, rename these. You tap this the 3 dots, right? Rename this, duplicate, move up, move down, like depending on how you want to organize this, right? So now, let's say I want to do this and I want to inset this, so I can go inset PG, and now it's super fast, as you can see. So I'm going to try to keep this to the same sort of distance over there. And now going over here, I want to turn on that symmetry, and I want to make sure that we have local symmetry on. Why is local symmetry giving me this off size? Let's turn on dynamic on the Y in my case, because looking dynamic local symmetry is looking at the gizmo. So there we go. And now what I want to do is I want to go and split. This is a point action, and I can save this if I want. I can just split this, so something like that. Tap Alt to get that little difference over there. And if I want to maintain this, actually I want to do this like so it's a little bigger, so something like that, for example, right? And now what I want to do is I want to inset actually QMesh polygroup island and just do that. Whoops a daisy. That's not working as intended. So I'm doing some weirdness over there. Oh, of course. It's the other way. You need to have the same topology over there. So we're using my dynamic. I'm gonna go and mirror and weld on the Z axis. Let me just do that actually on the Y axis. So I'm gonna go Y, geometry modify topology mirror and weld, and now it should work. There we go. So now that is useless. So I can go like this, Control Shift A, delete hidden, and then we have a little bit of a shape here going. You see that? So now I can also just QMesh polygroup island again, just to push it out a little bit. Obviously this is a little wonky over there. We could also just basically stitch this together. So I can go stitch, 2 points to endpoint. I'm gonna save a preset to this. So I'm gonna go stitch, stitch, end, and press save. And now I'm gonna use this all the time. I'm gonna go like this, up, symmetry. There we go, bada bing, bada boom. There we go. Go over here, bada bing, bada boom. Bada bing, bada boom. And now QMesh this. And now we shouldn't have a problem. Something like that, right? If I turn on, with micro poly off, and I want to actually crease based on an angle. This is probably a little too much, so I want to manually go over here, go to crease, edge, and uncrease these edges manually. Same thing goes over here. Whoops, I pinned in a little poly group. There we go. And I want to add some smooth subdivisions, so something like this, right? Now what we can actually do is we can actually go ahead and mask this. Actually, I want this to have symmetry on the X. There we go. And I want to mask this off. Go over here and push this. Whoops, a daisy, not dynamic. At this point, we want to just push this. Whoop. Careful with that. There we go. I'm going to push it out. Whoops. Control N. Something like this. And now if we do that, we get a little bit of a different shape. Sort of like this. And there we go. And now we can start sculpting. Now, why do I do this? Because I can actually just come in here. And this is creased to oblivion. So let me just uncrease that and then crease by angle again. I can change that angle to something a little more tolerant. So maybe something like 89 degrees. Crease. And there we go. And it creases that. And now I can just Q mesh that polygroup island. Go all the way down. And then we have 2 holes over there. If you want to make sure that these stay round, I can do an inset first. Whoops. Polygroup island. Why is this insetting the whole thing? This is weird. Let me just change that. There we go. I see. It's not looking at the proper... There we go. Let me do this. And now I want to inset that like that. And now I want to Q mesh. And you can see how fast it is with ZModeler presets. Whoops. I don't want to Q mesh single. I want to Q mesh polygroup island. And there we go. That's that fast. Now we have a little bit of a something going on over there. And then we can have our handle. Right? I don't use... Dude, I was on your boat for years. For like 10 years, I used to do all my retopology in Maya until I found out that I'm like 10 times faster in ZBrush. That's it. And at the end of the day, if you're working for production, speed, man. Speed. And the retopology brush is new. So it's something we didn't have before. We had the topology brush, which is different. We had basically Z-sphere retopology, which is the old school thing, the old school way. We have ZModeler. The ZModeler retopology, which kind of works like quad draw, but now we have the retopology brush, which is, well, again, kind of like quad draw on steroids, basically. Just way more that you can do with the retopology brush than what you can in something like Maya. The retopology brush, if so, for me, when I activate it, the Zoom 3D tool start working like rotate tool. What do you mean? The Zoom 3D tool start working like a rotate tool? That's interesting. I know what you mean, but let me just go ahead, go like this, divide a bunch of times. Let me just delete lower. All right, let's say I want to retopologize this, so I'm gonna go retopo brush. There we go. It's a little bit of a heavy polygon. So I want to go and let's start tapping that. Select yes to create a new retopo mesh. Now we have a new retopo mesh. I don't know what you mean. I'm still zooming the same. So now I can tap a few of these and then turn my draw size on all the way. Whoops. And then just tap that. Why is this not previewing correctly? That's strange. Let's just do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. And now it's working. It's working. I don't know what you mean. You can smooth and it snaps like that. Let's say I want a cap. So now I have a patch over here, so I can tap that and then Alt, drag that patch over there. And now use this as a deformer, meaning I can add, whoops, sorry. Yeah, I see what you mean. This is the bug, right? This is what you're talking about. That if you hold Alt, it just goes rotate. Yeah, I see what you mean. This is an issue. We'd have to take a look at this. Well, this is working now, but if I tap Alt, okay, no, it's working. Well, there's something there that's happening when you hold Alt, and then you tap that, and now your tool doesn't work properly. So that's interesting. Well, that's a good call out. Thank you. I'm gonna take a look at this. Combining both is the ultimate law. Yeah, that's true. Like at the end of the day, you combine whatever you need to get the job done faster, right? Yeah. I see that. I see the issue. I'm gonna have to replicate this a couple of times, and then and then find a way to actually, let me just try that with the lattice deformer. Just do that, and then I can move this. Okay, this is working. There we go. Yeah, the moment I tap into this mode, okay, the moment I tap there, it's just not seeing the point. It's actually seeing the document, unless there's something behind it. So it's basically this. It needs to have something behind it, otherwise it's reading the document, so it's rotating. Right? So this, right? This is what is happening. It's just, sometimes it works, sometimes it just does this. As long as there's nothing on the background, then it's not. Then I tap this, and there we go. And now we can retopo, smooth retopo. Now the patch system is something you can't find in Maya. I can assure you. And the patch system allows you, if you're retopoing meshes and you're doing the same kind of edge flow over and over again, it allows you to just go, okay, I need a mouth or something. Like we have, like you even have here, like some basic, and we have human. Like we have a whole, like a mouth bag, let's say. So now I can tap a point there, hold Alt, and drag like a mouth bag. And now again, tapping Alt increases that resolution, meaning that I can go on a face or something and start tweaking this, right? And now I can tweak this and conform it to my shape. And the moment I tap on this, it actually snaps to that surface. And I can hold Shift and smooth it out. This is the sort of stuff that you won't, this is unique to ZBrush because it's leveraging our IMM system, right? So yeah, cool call out. Though, thank you. I'm gonna try to replicate this and see if it's an actual issue. If not, I'll get back to you on the next stream for sure. Right, so we have something like this, and now we want to have a little bit of a handle, right? So let's do a handle over here. Oh, and one thing, right? Let's say I want this to be filled with like grain and stuff. This is very interesting, which is what I did for this one, right? Not this one, sorry. This one. And at the end of the day, you really only need let me just go back to a regular brush. You really only need the appearance of having stuff like that, and then this gets baked down to a plane, so it really doesn't matter. The amount of weirdness that is coming out of the displacement here doesn't really matter because it's gonna get baked down to a flat plane anyway. So if you go over here, and it averages out the normals, which is important when you bake in substance. You can type into average out the normals, and there you go. So let's go, this doesn't really matter, so I'm gonna delete all. Okay, and now go over to our, there we go. What I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna take this yeah, I'm gonna get a circular pattern over here. Let me just change this to a cylinder 3D and split the unmasked points. Turn off that dynamic subdivision, rotate it like 90 degrees like that, scale it down, and like this, so it sort of matches that, right? And now once we have this, I just need a cap, so I can just go ahead and select that cap over there, delete hidden, geometry modify topology, delete hidden. And now I want this to be, I don't want triangles for this workflow, right? I want to spawn a bunch of meshes, like nano mesh. I'm going to use nano mesh. You guessed it. I didn't make a poll or a question or whatever, but you guessed right. It's nano mesh. So I have this little plane here, this little circle, and I'm just going to run a quick Z remesher because I want quads all over this. So I'm going to do same, turn off adaptive size, just to make sure. I'm paranoid, so I turn adaptive size down to 0. I can detect edges or freeze border, but in this case, doesn't really matter. I'm going to keep the same. Actually, I want to double this because this gets me weird shape. So I'm going to do the radial symmetry on the Y, and I want to do this locally, but not dynamic. So do that. Oh, it doesn't work, of course. So I need to do Z and X. Doesn't look at radial symmetry. So something like this, and then half. And here's the cool thing. Here's something that would allow you to do this the center point properly. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna actually polygroup. Where's that polygroup? Am I in the polygon actions? Yeah, I'm in the polygon actions. Polygroup, polyloop. Sorry, it's kind of transparent because I changed the colors of my system. So I'm gonna polygroup, polyloop, and then I want to keep groups and I want to smooth these to 0.1. I always do 0.1. I'm gonna same and turn on that transform, turn off radial, same, and there we go. We have some cleanish kinda topology. I want to do half just to make sure that I optimize geometry. So there you go. We have this cute little circle patch, right? And now with this, I have a little grain model over here that's kind of like for my IMM. It's a very basic grain piece, right? And I can even model, I don't know, something else, like a potato or something. I don't know. Let's try that. Let's just duplicate this. And let's see. Okay. I'm going to go and I'm going to use some of my crazy, let me just basically, do I have this? Divide. Yeah, let's divide a couple of times. Why is this not? That's interesting. Do I have something turned on? Is it creasing? That's strange. Why is it not dividing properly? Why is this not a polymesh 3D? That's interesting. That is very, very weird. Okay, so divide that, and then let's delete the lower subdivisions. And now I want to go ahead and use, I don't know, some, let's use some project primitive, right? And now I can scale this up, something like this. I want to make a weird kind of like potato. All right, so I'm gonna maybe do that. And I want to go primitive type. I can change the primitive type. So it'd be something like that. Maybe this would be fine if it's like pushed up. And then maybe a little off center. So like that. And then duplicate this. And accept. I want to accept that. Wait, let me just change that rotation. Maybe scale it up so it's actually like a bulging form. And do that, and now we have tessellation. I can tessellate a little bit, and maximum displacement. I can actually go, I don't know, something like this. Scale it down, and then apply grouping. I don't want to apply grouping. What I want to do is actually change how this affects. So new surface accept, new surface blend, right? So I want this to blend. So like this doesn't really matter. So I want to accept this, and I want to move another one like that, and I want to blend it like that, make it a little smaller. And then after we have this, actually, let me just do another thing. Let me just remesh this. I'm gonna go over here and do some Dynamesh, and I want to pick the resolution, Dynamesh that, and now I can go inflate and start inflating that out. Why is this? Okay, that's interesting. Is this topological? No. Right, there we go. So now Dynamesh it again, just to make sure it kind of looks like a potato. I don't know. You guys tell me. It's a little weird. It's a weird potato. I don't know what I'm doing. Thought I would do project primitive, but let's do this and actually increase that intensity. So I could do a little bit of a more blocky potato. Let's do that. There we go. And let's do a little bit on the side here and make sure that it looks kind of semi-organic, something like this, right? Remesh this. Let's go a little higher. and start applying this, right? Now, let's apply some surface noise. I'm gonna apply that noise. Let's go a little bit crazy. And there we go. And we want to apply some noise plugin, and I want to do Voronoi. That's fine. Plugin scale. I just want to make sure that it's something like this. Going to the opposite actually. And make sure that this is still like that. And now I want to start mixing in that. I wanted this to be on the max, maybe minimum, and mix that like that. Or maybe multiply. Difference, there we go. Now I want to change that plugin scale to be something like this. And then less strength. Alright, that's okay. Doesn't really matter. Now smoothing this out, going like that. Let's apply this noise. Let's go to surface. Apply mesh. Do the same thing, apply to mesh. Now I want to start doing my Damien standard brush, and I want to do some color spray, and I want to do scale placement, jitter. Well, now I want to do like that. Alright, so it's a little less even. I do a little bit of that smoothing out. And so we're doing sort of like this weird potato. Like a few second video uploaded on official ZBrush Discord help section under ZBrush with alien head. I mean, I haven't taken a look at the ZBrush Discord in a long time, man. I'm not, unfortunately, not that active on Discord anymore. I'm a little bit on my own Discord. I have a few. I have a little bit of time where I can check that out. But you know, there we go. So now we have this weird potato. I don't know. Looks weird, right? So let's just say, okay, this is a potato. I don't know if it is or not. It's weird. Food is hard, okay? To sculpt food is super hard. Patrick 4D does an amazing job, probably better than I do, at sculpting food. But there we go. So now we have something like this, and I want to make sure that I basically spawn this all over my, you know, my plane or whatever. So I want to make sure that this is actually the same as my low poly kind of version. So first things first, I want to make sure that this has UVs. So I'm gonna run real quick. I'm gonna run a slice. I'm gonna do slice curve brush, just do that. And then I want to tag and undo history over there. I want to zero mesh real quick. Keep groups, go smooth groups back on, turn same on. Let's do smooth groups to 1. Depth this size down to 0 and remesh this. And now that we have clean topology, cleanish, we can just run a UV master real quick. There we go. The cool thing about this is that you can just bake this model onto, you know, a single bake, and then you have that. Basically, and then you can just spawn it everywhere, even in ZBrush, still gonna get that bake information. So now we have this, which is our high poly. Let's say I can divide this up one more time and then just project history, because I had that detail in that kind of got lost. So I can do this again, maybe not as strong. Actually, this is still a little too strong, so I can do something like this, maybe. Like that, and do that. Actually, let me just project history first. So I'm gonna go project history. Whoops, Project history. There we go. Project history again. There we go. And now start sculpting. A little bit of that pattern, a little bit more. And you can see how this kind of gets a textured kind of look. And then we could go to our light box, go to brushes, the Maxon light boxes, not the user one, and go to smooth. And under smooth, go smooth peaks, I think. That's it. Yep, and then just start. Turn off that lazy mouse. Smooth peaks, and if you do this and start smoothing the peaks, it doesn't smooth the cavities as much. So there you go. We have a potato, right? Which has UVs, right? Which is important. And now we want to have a low poly kind of version. So I'm gonna basically call this taters. If you watch Lord of the Rings, you know. What do you know? You know. Taters. What's taters, precious? So now let's duplicate this. And because I have UVs, I'm going to delete the lower. I'm going to go to Z plugin, go to decimation master. Keep UVs needs to be on. And I'm going to pre-process current. It's going to take its time. There we go. Done. It's not that high poly anyway. And now I want to make sure that I have, I don't know, 10K. And decimate. And this is the result, and it has UVs, and you can see it's trying to retain that edge along the middle, just so now we have UVs. And let's go even lower, actually. Let's do 5. Decimate current. There we go. And it still has UVs, and you can tell it has UVs if you go over here to our UV master, click flatten. There's your UVs, and they match the other UVs. So you can do even LODs like this. It's an old technique that I keep using. So make current. Frick's sake. Did I do something wrong? Yeah, I did. And the moment I click flatten, it just gives me, yeah. Doesn't matter. This looks great. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Bueller. Okay, so now I'm gonna rename this Taters Low. This is just so I can actually. Why do I have a exclamation mark? I know this is probably the reason. The reason that it didn't read properly. But there you go. We have a high poly and a low poly. This is all that matters. And now what I need to do is I want to actually create an IMM brush. So I'm going to create an insert mesh brush. Click new. It's going to create that with my single subtool. And then I'm going to click insert mesh, append. I could do insert multi-mesh and it would just look at my subtools, but I wanted to show you that because I also get that question a lot. And now we can scroll side to side on our IMM brush, right? In short time, I'm convinced that it is a potato. Thank you. Taters. What taters, precious? Okay, so now that I'm done with my foolishness and my dry jokes, let's just go back over here. And what I want to do, first and foremost, is I want to be able to spawn this all over this mesh. And for that, I want to go over here and actually convert this to a nano mesh brush. That means I can go over here, insert nano mesh brush, and go to polygon, all polygons, and just spawn taters. Taters. Taters everywhere. And now once I have those taters, I can go over to my nano mesh menu. And this is also an instancing system. And I can go size, I can increase that size. Actually, let's do 1. So now it's actually true to the size, right? And I can tweak this based off of, I don't know, this is probably why I like to have a mannequin of some sort that is actually human scale next to my models. So I'm gonna insert the Unreal mannequin over here. And you can see the Unreal mannequin matches the actual size of a game character in Unreal. So if I go over here, this is 0.5 meter, which seems about right. It's like that because the character is at 1.8 meters tall. And now the potatoes are too small. I wouldn't fry those potatoes. I would mash them, boil them, stick them in the stew, right? So what I need to do is actually go over here on my taters And let's rename this to actually Taters Plane. It's the Taters Plane. Oh, I didn't save my UI, basically. My UI colors are all wrong. I just go ahead and put it over there. And where is that? Is that the text stage? No. Oh, come on. Come on. It's auto-saving. See? I didn't completely turn it off. And this should be... actually, I think it's this one. Yeah, there you go. And I want to make sure that this one is that. And I want to turn that color over there. And I want to make sure that this is that color. There we go. Perfect. And now that's a little more readable. So now if I go over here, okay, in my taters, and go to my nano mesh settings, I keep it proportional. I could also tell it to fit those quads, which gives me weird sizing because they are not exactly the same size and you get some stretching over there. I'm gonna keep it proportional, and I'm gonna just vary the width by 1.1, like ever so slightly, really, not a lot. So 25, so 25% variance. Over here, I'm gonna do 0.9. And then 25. Actually, let's do 12. And height, I want to do 1.1. And the variation could actually be very, very small, like that, right? And now the rotation is what gets us that believability. So if I start rotating, and now variation and rotating, and then the same with the Y rotation, and then a little bit of variation, and the Z rotation, and then a little bit of that variation. And now random distribution is going to give us that, which is what we want for those taters. So maybe a little less random distribution and increase that size a little bit. There we go. So we have some taters. We could also just turn off that nano mesh, go to geometry, and then just remesh this. So I can just go ahead. Actually, before we do that, I want to turn on nano mesh and I want to copy that. Because if you lose that, because you're changing the what do you call it? You're changing the basically the workflow. Jesus, I lost my train. You're changing the edge flow. Sorry, the orientation of the geometry, right? And now I can go over here. And there we go. And now if we have it over here, I can just change this. I can also just basically go move and start moving this stuff around. And you can see it doesn't deform the taters. Dem taters. And let's go ahead and mask. Go to masking, mask by feature border, and let's do this. Let's push this up, and I want to smooth out that a little bit, and then just push this up a little bit. There we go. Now I can remesh this without worrying. So I'm going to go turn off that nano mesh. I'm going to create a new view set so I can just view this single basket thing. Yeah, this one actually works nice. So I'm gonna move this down. And ZModeler, polygroup, polyloop. There we go. And now the same thing with symmetry on. ZRemesher. Let's do half actually. ZRemesh by half, ZRemesh by half. It's giving me less and less topology, but not a lot though. Let's ignore the symmetry. We really don't care about symmetry at this point. Let's do by half, maybe something like this. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'll just do that. And now we can go back to our basically nano mesh brush and that's use the taters, and then insert nano mesh on all, and now I can just paste my previous settings, right? And now this looks a little better, so I can change that size to back to 1, right? And I can get, maybe I can scale this down. We don't need this to be that much. And then random distribution, we could have something like this, right? So now the thing is, if we hide the placement plane, this is actually what we're getting. And then you can have the plane itself with like a tileable, like potato texture. I don't know, whatever. So this is basically what we've learned to do. I'm sorry that I didn't get to the bag, right? Because again, Mr. Tangent goes off on tangents and stuff. That's fine. You guys want to see it anyway. So there we go. But quick little note on this, right? You can do a little bit of a like a curve. Like let's say you can do the the Z spheres, but you can also just do a little simple primitive. So you can insert, let's say, like this cube or whatever. Scale it down like that. Change this to like polycube. Actually, I want to change this to the actual shape that I want, like a ring 3D. And then I want to scale this up like that. Like that. And now I want to go extender. Like that. Increase that resolution. Like that, and then if we go like this, we can actually match it to that, sort of by eye, doesn't need to be perfect, something like this, right? And now because this is still, whoops, let's go to select lasso, delete that, delete hidden, close holes, there we go. We can add a pattern, like micro poly pattern to this. Like if you do that, you basically get, let's see, you basically get some weird, I don't know if that will work for our scenario here, so let's go to micro poly, geometry dynamic subdivision, micro poly, and let's add, like this wire thing. There we go, I guess that works. So maybe 0 smooth subdivisions. I can still reduce this a little bit. Let's reduce this. Let's go to ZRemesher, do half, no adaptive size, and just run a ZRemesher by half. And then again, align again, rotate like so, and we get a little bit of a rope. I can deflate this by holding Control. And there we go. And now we can sculpt this actual wooden section. And the thing is, because this is still low poly, again, as I've told you guys, let's scale this down ever so slightly. So like that, and maybe inflate it up like so. We can also, because this is still low poly, we can use that deformer, that bend curve, you know, like the most popular deformer ever. And let's change that axis to something like this. And now we can actually have this be something like that. Increase that resolution to something like this, right? And there we go. Simple as that. Obviously this looks kind of fake, so we could actually do a little bit of a better job with our bend curve. Let's actually just move it down like that. Something like this, where it would actually touch that part, right? And also, brush move infinite depth, or whatever move you want to use. And let's just tweak this so it doesn't look as weird and flat and symmetrical. So you'd have something like that, right? And again, because this is still on that plane, you could bake this, right? No issue. Or you're just previewing what it looks like with an actual pattern, like just applied from a, I don't know, a tileable texture or something like that, you know, for your workflow. Great. Cool, guys. So this is where I'm leaving. I'm leaving these as is. Next time we can go through bags and cloth simulation and all those stitching brushes that I've had. I ripped them out of XMD, the XMD toolbox that that some of you guys are using, right, with ZBrush. It was a plugin for ZBrush. And if it's not working with the newest version of ZBrush, because we restructured the way the folder structure works, which is more intuitive, and now you can actually save your own folder structure for your custom UI, for your brushes, for your alphas. You don't need to migrate that every time you update to a new version of ZBrush. But the caveat is that XMD doesn't read the source folder anymore, because it's not looking at the same folder. So the solution to that would actually be to download those brushes if you have a license to XMD, and then just putting them on your own custom Lightbox folder, right? And then once you do that, you get access to all of those brushes. And I have my master cloth brushes here because I have the whole package, like the whole toolbox, and you can see we have some sewing, some stitching, and we can go through that on the next stream. And hopefully I will be a little bit more advanced on this, progressed a little bit more on my journey over here, and there we go. So yeah, and I can even show you some cool ZBrush to Substance Painter kind of workflows as well, which would be cool for you guys to see. Running them through something like Cinema 4D for textile density and UV packing, and then shooting it over to Substance. That would be cool. So that's a Maxon 1 workflow right there, right? Cool, guys. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We had a steady audience today, which is pretty cool to see. I love you guys. I love this community. I love what you guys are doing. I see it on ZBrush Central. So here's a quick shout out to ZBrush Central. We do the staff picks every week. I should have started with this, actually started this stream with this. But every week we nominate little staff picks here. So if you guys haven't posted on ZBrush Central is the main hub for everything ZBrush. And you can see we have incredible artwork being posted every single week. There's my man, Paul Gabriel. There's my girl, well, not my girl, my girlfriend would kill me if it's but my friend, Marina Lorente, and she's a creature artist from Spain. So there's a few people here that are like incredible, and you can see every week we get bombarded with incredible artworks, like every single week. Like you can see like the ones that are grayed out are the ones I checked out. Like here's my man Marco Plouffe, also doing some crazy hard surface sculpting, and we nominate them. So if you guys haven't, just join in ZBrush Central, start posting, start commenting, watching these threads, watching the behind the scenes and how they make some of these posts have like making offs and time lapses and stuff like that, and comment, engage with the community, because this is a wonderful community and I love you guys so much. So if you guys start posting there, there's a chance that if you make it, you know, it's also a goal for you guys. We actually nominate you every week, and then at the end of the week, the whole staff from the ZBrush team gets to vote on their favorite, and the one that wins the most votes gets to be up here on the staff picks. And obviously we still have the top row. And by the way, in case you guys don't know, this is where the ZBrush screensaver sources its images. It's from the top row, and you can see if the actual screensaver comes on screen, that we actually it says on the bottom the name of the artist, and if it's top row, if it's staff pick, or if it's the beta image, right? Because we have a community of beta testers as well, and those are incredible beta testers that we have, and they make artwork for our beta every time we run a beta cycle, and that artwork gets featured on ZBrush Central and then posted here. But also, if you're posting any cool artwork, maybe on other platforms such as ArtStation, etc., you want to consider also posting. If you do a lot of ZBrush, or it doesn't need to be a lot, as long as ZBrush is included, you're free to post anything on ZBrush Central. So there's a lot of those works that you saw on ZBrush Central that actually are, you know, modeled in ZBrush and go into other software, and then, I don't know, Substance Painter or whatever. But there are some that are purely ZBrush, and you can see a lot of those artworks that are purely ZBrush. So cool. All right, you guys. Thank you, Matakushi. I hope I'm not butchering your names. That's why I try to avoid spelling out your names, because like I'm afraid I'm butchering them. All right, guys. I'll see you in a couple weeks, hopefully. And stay tuned on the ZBrush Live calendar for any further streams from our incredible ZBrush Live roster. Stay tuned on ZBrush Central for any news regarding ZBrush, any artwork that you guys might find interesting. Stay active, stay safe, stay healthy, and happy ZBrushing.